Income and support. I wrote down whether it's spouse support or child support, understanding your financial obligations is key. Factors like income levels, earning potential, and childcare need to come into play here. Make sure you negotiate fair support agreements that consider everyone's financial well-being. So we're talking about child support, spouse support, a lot of things that we can talk about here, but I do want to keep this high level. It's up to you if you want spouse support. What I would tell you is, understand the laws, if you will, in regards to spouse support, long-term marriage versus short-term marriage, how child support, how spouse support and child support is calculated. And, the spouse support is basically income-based, income to income. The child support is income-based plus timeshare is accounted for. And varying those factors can change the amount of support. Going back to what I talked about earlier, you don't have to incorporate that as an actual court order. You guys can have that behind the scenes if you like. And again, negotiating a fair settlement is as a global settlement, look at everything and see what makes sense. Had consultations today with folks that they didn't have kids, but the issue was support. And when we looked at it and ran the numbers, and this happens a lot, they'll say, yeah, I want, they'll say, well, I could use support. And they'll say, well, what are your incomes? And I'll run the incomes. And if your incomes are at a level that the court would consider to be self-supporting, then generally there's not going to be any spousal support. So for instance, we ran a spouse support order where one party made 140,000 and the other spouse made 100,000. And they're like, Tim, it's 40,000 less. I assume there would be spouse support. And you would think there would be, right? No support payable based on the calculation, because the court, when I say the court, this algorithm that they use determines that if you're making 100,000, you're probably self-supporting and don't need spouse support. Could you go to court, get an attorney and convince a judge that you need support? Sure. It's needs based. It's not just the income to income. It's also needs based. If you had a need, higher, cost of living or whatnot, and you could prove that to the judge, then maybe you'll get some spouse support. But when we're doing this from an amicable fashion, sometimes people just want to see the numbers and say, oh yeah, you ran the report, there's no spouse support, and call it a day. Because I've had people saying, Tim, we agree on everything but the spouse support. I want it, he doesn't want to pay it, or vice versa. I run the numbers and it turns out it's zero. And suddenly they're in agreement because they have a document that says there's no spouse support. I want to say on one of the consultations today, we solved 8 of the 9 issues they had just by filling in the missing information. And this happens so many times. You guys just don't know what you need to know to make informed decisions. And I do that on the consultations many times. And you can walk away and say, oh, wow, thanks. I got it. Now we can sit down now knowing what we know and go figure this out.